Good afternoon and welcome to Apex Instant Tips episode 90, brought to you every Friday at 12:05 Eastern Time. I'm Anton and we have with us today a special guest, Hayden. Welcome.
Great to be here, Anton. And excited about today's episode. Today we're talking about something that doesn't concern everybody, but to those few that it does concern, it will interest greatly.
Yes, and it's a tiny slice of the Apex community, but I think even when it doesn't directly apply to you, you can learn something about Apex and about the database, about how it works. So this is an interesting topic. Maybe I'll start right away and give an example of one of the scenarios where I've run into it, and we can talk about a scenario you've run into it. Maybe show how to.
Yeah, and we still haven't even said what it is.
Right. Yeah. Well, let me give you my example, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
My example, episode 38, I introduced the idea about cloning an Apex session. And I published some code for if you right-click on a link and you open it in a new tab, it will automatically, no matter what, clone the session. So I have this code, I deployed it, but my code only works if you're not using friendly URLs. My code doesn't work if you are using friendly URLs. So, and so people have asked me to fix it, but the problem is some versions of Apex, I can't even check because friendly URLs didn't exist. So yeah, so I depending on the version of Apex, my code needs to do something different. I suppose I could release two different code bases or something, but yeah.
Yeah, and so to put it bluntly, today's tip is about solving a problem that will be common and important to Apex developers that have to coordinate across multiple versions of Apex. So not every developer will be concerned by this, but if you are in that situation, what we're about to talk about is very relevant because the problem is very hard to solve. So how about I share my screen and we'll kick this off.
All right. Great.
So by way of example, similar to yours, Anton, I want to, in my application status tracker, which is not the point of this episode, but it's a template for this tip, I want to be able to make use of this column, which is a new feature as of Apex 21.1, that will allow me to clarify whether or not an accessibility standard is being met.
I think that's episode 88, am I right?
Episode 88, that's right. So in order to assert this standard, I need to reference this column in this Apex view.
But that view isn't even there. The view is there, but the column's doesn't even exist in earlier versions.
Yeah, so I think we all know what will happen if I try to compile this in a version of Apex that is below Apex 21.1. The entire package will fail to compile. Right. And I have other standards that I care about. I don't want my entire standards tracker to break just because you don't have Apex 21.1.
Right.
So my options aren't great. Do you have a suggestion?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I considered. I considered doing this. I considered querying the Apex dictionary. And the Apex dictionary has the view name and the column name. And so I could check, does this view in that column exist in the Apex dictionary view? And if it does exist, I could use an execute immediate to create this data. And then if it doesn't exist, I would know it doesn't exist. So it's a little bit convoluted, and it involves an execute immediate, which right away, has all kinds of extra things to look out for.
Well, what I like about my tip, especially, so I actually like your solution perfectly well, but what I like about my tip is that the code is already written and was written by somebody else, specifically Steven Feuerstein. In episode 34 of Feuertips, he introduced me to the concept of conditionally compiling across multiple Apex versions. So he was generous enough to publish his code on LiveSQL. And it involves installing a function and a procedure that you could logically then put in your repo. The function will return the Apex version. And the procedure, which you can run as many times as you please harmlessly, takes as input parameter this function and then the minimum version number. So what it does is it creates a package that you would then not put in your repo to deploy, because you would essentially run this with every release. And if you, I'm querying a user source to output the contents of the package. Inside this package called Oracle Apex version that this procedure created, it instantiates a series of constants and booleans that you can then reference in your conditional compilation. So bear with me if some of these concepts are a little abstract. I will clarify this. So key to my example is it instantiates a version constant that has a value of 22 and a release constant which has a version of 1. I only make use of this version constant. So in my solution to my problem, I have rewritten my code to conditionally compile it on the basis of whether or not the version is a minimum of 21.
Right. And just to talk a little bit about conditional compilation, why didn't you just reference the function that he has? Why do you have to have this extra package with the constants?
Because that would error.
Yeah.
I need the value that I'm referencing to be a package constant.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So you can't use that. You have to have this package. Exactly.
Right.
So,
and then this dollar syntax that you see here is the signature of conditional compilation.
And certainly those few lines of code are both way more descriptive than my, querying from the view and writing an execute immediate, and a lot shorter. And that's a great.
Yeah. To me, this feels very maintainable.
Yeah. So the only downside with this is that this means that I really do need to get out and fix my plugin.
Right. Yeah. So now you have no excuse.
No excuse. So, exactly.
Yeah. So it's so Steven Feuerstein's code is well written and more important and well documented. So that there's now an easy solution to this complex and hard to solve problem.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think this is a slice of the Apex development community that will need this, but when they do, they're going to be very happy to have it available. So.
And that is it for time.
Ah, perfect. Yeah. So many thanks to both you and Steven. I don't have a lot more for today's episode, but I do have one more thing that's related, and that's this package that Steven creates a whole bunch of booleans. You kind of glossed over it, but I have to say, I don't find the booleans that it creates to be helpful in any way at all. In fact, I find them to be a hindrance.
Sure.
And the reason, just for folks that are really digging into this, and Steven, I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you to figure out. Oh, excellent! Somebody actually liked the tip. I'm loving that. The reason I don't like the booleans is they, in a particular environment, they only ever make it up to the point of the release you're on. So if you can't use in your code if Oracle Apex version dot and the Boolean that references 22.1, you can't use that, because if you want to install this in an 18.1, it's not going to be there. So I just don't. I guess my point is I recommend you use the version and the release, and I don't see how using the Booleans.
Yeah, I mean, so in an example, I'm only using the constant declarations in the package spec. So yeah, I don't have an example for how to make use of the booleans effectively.
Yeah. Unless it somehow created booleans that would just automatically go up to 50.5 or 50 something.
Yeah. I could imagine the solution could take the form of. Well, you would have to periodically rerun this procedure anyway, because those constants are not going to self-update. So as your Apex version increases, those constants are going to stay the same until you rerun the procedure.
You have to do two things, actually. You have to rerun that procedure, but you also have to recompile your package, because your package won't automatically reference those. It only happens at compile time. So it does mean rerun the procedure that creates the package, and then recompile your own. Because it's a compile time directive. So I said I didn't have much to say, but when it comes to conditionally compiling, things are a little bit, it's a big topic.
Yeah. And not one that I've made much use of, but it's very powerful.
I agree. So I'm on the hook, and I don't know if there's anybody that's watching that has actually asked me to do this, but I've had a few people ask me to do it. Rich, create a job that runs each hour. Ooh. I mean, you only would need to do it at the time that you upgrade Apex. I mean, it's when you upgrade Apex that you would want to do it. So, I mean, I think that you could just make it part of your upgrade procedures, right? Your standard operating procedures is upgrade Apex and then rerun the procedures, create the package, and recompile your schema.
Well, and certainly the way I've implemented it, it's now in the release script. So at a minimum, when you're releasing and installing everything from scratch, you run this, and at least at that point, it will be accurate. How it then gets updated is up for you to figure out.
Yeah. So lots of good options in here, but I think the one that you just mentioned is good at the point of release anyway, especially if you're recompiling all of your database packages nowadays.
Right.
Well, people have wasted a perfectly good, looks like 11 minutes. If you like the show, like
and subscribe.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Have a good weekend. Happy Halloween.
Do we have music on this one?
I'm not sure.
Music? I don't know. Or do we just add? I don't even know.